Welcome to our final chapter for personal finance class, chapter 19 on retirement planning. In this chapter, we're going to talk about the role of Social Security, which is certainly an important part of your overall plan for retirement, and hopefully for you guys, it'll still be around in one form or another 30 or 40 years from now. We're also going to try and explain the difference between a defined benefit and a defined contribution retirement plan. Talk about some of the key decisions you got to make regarding retirement plans. Identify the retirement plans offered by employers. Also, those retirement plans available for self-employed individuals. And also describe the types of individual retirement accounts that are available without having any employer involved. We'll talk briefly about annuities and how they can be used. We'll talk about estimating your future retirement account savings, and finally, how the retirement planning fits into your financial plan. So we'll start by looking at Social Security, which is a federal program. It taxes you during your working years and uses the funds to make payments to you upon retirement. Now, unfortunately, it's not a program that sets, as it pulls money out, it doesn't set them aside in a fund earmarked for you. It's kind of a pay-as-you-go that the money you're putting into Social Security is actually helping to pay the requirements of currently retired individuals. So it's not like there's a guarantee that the money you've put in is going to be available when you retire. Which is part of what makes it a little, there's a little bit of uncertainty of where it's going to be in years to come. And the demographics, which we've talked about a little in class already, are not good because there's more people retiring and living longer and relatively fewer people in the workforce to support those folks that are retired. And without some changes, Social Security is basically going to run out of money. But I'm pretty confident that they'll find a way going forward to make the appropriate changes in the program so that there's still some type of Social Security federal program available for those that retire 30, 40 years from now, when most of you will be approaching or looking at approaching retirement or in retirement. Second point is, when we talk about Social Security, it's not really designed to be something that you will take care of all your needs and provide adequate income to solely support you, unless you're going to be living on a very, very limited income. And that's even assuming put a lot in and made quite a bit during your working years. So it's something that's there to augment the retirement that you've built up and what you're going to get in terms of a pension or out of your 401ks or other retirement plans or IRA. We'll talk about some of the other retirement plans and savings that you hopefully will build up during your working lives. So to qualify for Social Security, you need to accumulate 40 credits from contributing to Social Security. You get 4 credits per year if your income's at least $1,320 per quarter, or a little over $5,000 a year. Not that high hurdle to clear. So basically, after 10 years, you're going to qualify for some level of Social Security. Now, there's also Social Security. It's available for disabled. If you somehow became disabled, you can get Social Security benefits, and they're potentially not able to work. Also, if something happens to you and you're deceased, any survivor potentially will have benefits. Your spouse, there'll be a one-time income payment to the spouse and monthly income payments if the spouse is older than 60 or has a child under the age of 16. Also, there could be monthly payments to children under 18 or up to 19 if they're still attending school full-time. So Social Security, in addition to the retirement benefits, also will pay some other disability and survivor benefits. But since this is a retirement chapter and we're talking about that, we'll focus on the retirement benefits. And the retirement benefit that you're actually going to get depends on your income and the number of years you earn the income. So the more you make, and you're taxed on your income right now up to about $110,000, $120,000 a year. To kind of max out your benefits, the most that they'll pay you, you would have needed to make like over or in the range of $100,000 a year or more for 30, 40 years, kind of reach the maximum benefit that you could. But if you make something less than that, the average, you're going to get a lower amount of retirement benefits. So it is dependent on how many years you worked and how much you paid in over that time. Now, to give you a rough idea, it provides on average about 40% of your annual income in retirement. If you're in a higher income category, it's probably less than 40%. If you're on the lower income category, it might be more than 40%. So that's why we say on average, it's about 40% of your income in retirement. So it's, as I mentioned before, it's not usually what you're going to rely on in total. It certainly helps, but is not, just to give you an idea, I know people that are retired and are getting anywhere from $15,000, $20,000 up to $30,000 a year in Social Security income. Now you can receive those benefits beginning at age 62. And if you start getting them, then you're going to get a reduced benefit amount for the rest of your life. So it may be that if you wait till age 65, you could be eligible to get, let's say, $2,000 a month. If you wait till your full retirement age, which, let's say it's 67. If you wait till 67, you get $2,000 a month. If you decide to take it at age 62, you'll start 5 years early, but you may only get $1,500 a month for the rest of your life. So, kind of depending on when you start taking it, you lock in what your monthly benefits are going to be for the rest of your life. So there is some benefit to waiting till you'll get more every year. And it's an ongoing argument as to when you should do it, whether it should be, and it kind of depends on individual health, potential life expectancy, other types of income you need. Some people, if they're going to retire, really need to start getting it at age 62, and if they, for maybe health reasons, had to retire early, they may be kind of forced to take it at 62 just to have that additional income to be able to live a reasonable lifestyle. So it's it's an interesting issue as you get closer to retirement to determine when you project is going to be a best time to start taking your benefits for Social Security. And a final point is you can earn some limited income while receiving Social Security. Actually, you could earn quite a bit, but the more you earn past a certain point, it's going to impact what benefits you get and how they're taxed and so forth. So they'll allow you to earn a little bit and kind of have a part-time job in retirement in addition to your Social Security, but it doesn't want you to start receiving Social Security and still working full-time and making a good deal of money. It's going to limit some of the benefits of getting your Social Security. Now, concerns for you guys in particular about retirement benefits in the future. Talked a little bit about the idea retirees are living longer, which costs the program more in benefits. And when it was originally designed, people had a life expectancy maybe 5-8 years less than it is now. And thus, there's a lot more benefits being paid out than was the case when Social Security was initially created. And thus, the amount being taken out and so forth is less based on kind of historical living patterns. And now, as people are living longer, it's putting strains on the program. Another issue is the number of retirees continues to grow relative to the number of workers in the system paying to support them. So demographics are such that the baby boomers that are retiring now, there's a huge amount of them compared to people going into the workforce and working to support them. So again, it's putting a stress that there's more being pulled out than actually going in to a degree, or it's approaching that level. Thus, many people are relying less on Social Security and establishing their own retirement programs. And also, from what I've told you, you don't really want to be relying solely on Social Security because it's just a limited amount, and you're going to be then limiting or being forced to work longer, or really taking a major cut in your lifestyle if you're relying heavily on Social Security and not on additional savings or other forms of income for your retirement. And there's the site, SSA, Social Security Administration, where you can look up more details. It's probably so early, you guys are not going to be too worried about getting additional information on Medicare and Social Security, but not surprisingly, there's a government website out there that you can check on these things. And it may be of interest to you in the not too distant future for your parents, or maybe your grandparents now. Now, let's move on to some of the other types of retirement plans that are out there that are things that you control rather than, well, again, still the amount that you work and the amount of years you work will impact your Social Security, but that's still a federal government program. What you want to do is be also augmenting that with your own retirement program. So start talking about employer programs and talk about defined benefit versus defined contribution plans. So both of these are employer-sponsored retirement plans. They're designed to help you save for retirement. And in both of these types of plans, the employees and or the employers are going to contribute money into the plan. So you're going to put money in, your employer's going to put money in, and that money is basically going to sit in an account for you to be able to pull out. Now, generally, it's set up that there's going to be a penalty if you try and pull the money out prior to age 59 and a half. Now, in some cases, there are some hardship things that they'll let you pull money out for reasons without getting a penalty, but generally, the idea is it's earmarked for your retirement. They don't want you deciding, hey, boy, I'd love a new car, and I'll pull money out of my retirement plan to do that, or I want to go on a vacation and I'll pull money. No, that money should be set aside for your retirement, and they're going to give you some advantages to putting it in for your retirement, but the downside is that money is tied up and you're not going to deal with it or have access to it until you turn 59 and a half, and then you can start pulling it out without any penalties. Now, the benefits of putting it in there is your contributions are tax deferred and taxed as ordinary income when withdrawn after retirement. So basically, if you put the money in today, it's not being taxed, and it's actually, you don't get taxed until you start pulling the money out, which could be 30, 40 years from now. Also, all the money that's in the account and is earned during that time is all tax deferred. So you're paying no taxes on the money that you put in and all the earnings that are accruing over that time until you pull it out. So that's the huge advantage you get for putting your savings into a defined benefit or contribution plan, or we'll talk about other savings plans that are set up and have the government benefit of tax deferral until you pull it out at some later date. Now, when we talk about defined benefit versus defined contribution, we'll see defined contribution plans are far more common nowadays than defined benefit plans. And most of you will probably go out and get into some type of defined contribution plan, unless you maybe go to work for the government, and some of the government workers are still in programs where they're defined benefit rather than defined contribution. Now, defined benefit plan is, again, the employer-sponsored retirement plan. It guarantees you a specific amount of income, so that it's defined benefit. The benefit that you're going to get is kind of defined, usually as a specific percentage of your income when you retire, and it'll be based on your retirement salary and often like your final year or final 3 years average or something like that of your salary, times some percentage depending on how long you were employed there. So if you maybe were there for 20 years, you get 60% of the average of your salary for the last 2 years or something like that. Or if you're there for 30 years, you might get 75% of your salary. So usually the longer you're there, the higher the percent of your salary that you'll get in retirement. And that will be a guaranteed amount for however long you live in retirement. And as I say, that was the common way going back in like the 1980s. Most people had defined, and most companies offered defined benefit plans. Over time, the move has been in the private sector that now the vast majority of companies offer defined contribution plans rather than defined benefit plans. Now, the term vested refers to the fact that usually you've got to work at the company, work at your employer for a period of time before you have full claims to the money that's been put in, especially the money that's been put in by the employer for you. Usually you'll have full access to whatever money you put in personally, but if the employer matched, there may be a period of time that you've got to work there before you can leave and get the matching amount. So that if you only work there for 9 months or something, they may say, well, you get all the money you put in, but you're not getting any of the match because you weren't even here a year, and we want to encourage people to stay for a while. So that vested refers to that claim on the portion of the money that has been reserved for you, and says basically how long you've got to be there to be fully vested in the program. Usually it may be 3 or 5 years, and sometimes, or it might start that you're partially vested after 3 years, and 50% vested maybe after 3 years, and it goes up by 10% a year. So by year 8, you're 100% vested, or something along those lines, to kind of encourage you to stay, and then you'll have most of the money if you leave after 3 or 4 or 5 years. But each company's a little different in terms of vesting, but usually it's not a terrible, you don't have to be there 20, 30, 40 years to be vested. It's usually a few years before you're fully vested. And again, the second point, that only 4% of the companies it should be offer defined benefit plans. And as I mentioned, it's more common in government. 80% of state and government workers still have defined benefit plans. Defined contribution plans, rather than getting a fixed amount, and the defined portion is really the defined of what you contribute to the plan. So here, you and your employer can contribute to a retirement account, and you have control ultimately over that retirement account in terms of what you invest in. And usually you're given a choice of a number of different types of funds you can invest in, and depending on your risk tolerance and your age and the number of factors that we've already talked about to some degree in the investments chapter, you're going to make a decision as to what's going to be the best mix and how you should invest your funds in your retirement account. And I point out that you can make that decision, and you can usually have the opportunity to change it periodically over time. So it's not something that you make the decision once and you're stuck with it. It's something usually you can change your investment mix depending periodically during the time you're working for the company. Now, when it comes to this defined contribution plan, one of the issues is usually you're given, some companies actually require that you put a certain amount in, but a lot of times you're given total leeway to say, you can invest up to X amount of your salary into this retirement plan. And so you have the decision. Do you want to have $100 a paycheck taken out? Do you want to have 200? Do you want to have 500? So it's your decision as to how much to contribute. And then often the employer will match a portion that you contribute. Now, in terms of this decision to contribute, one of the points, first point, a lot of people say, I'm only in my 20s, I'm only in my 30s, I got a long time before retirement, I'll wait, and I'd rather have that money today to spend it and to do things I want and to have a better lifestyle today rather than saving for tomorrow. Second point, from everything we've talked about, that's probably not a good idea. And by saving even a relatively small amount and maybe that's $50 a paycheck or something like that. If you start early, that money is going to be piling up and working for you. And we've talked about the time value of money, that you should start saving at an early age and on a consistent basis. That third point, contribute from every paycheck, is a good idea, and you get it pulled out and get used to living on a little bit less, and you're going to benefit in the long haul by having a nice, healthy retirement savings building up. It's going to give you a lot of flexibility when you get older to make decisions as to when you want to retire, how you want to retire, have more options available to you. So the benefits of this defined contribution plan, well, certainly if it's matching, and most of them, I think a later one says about 80% of defined contribution plans have matching opportunity from the employer. So if you put $1 in, they may match dollar for dollar, or match 50 cents for every dollar you put in. Either way, any of the money contributed by the employer is like extra income. They're adding to your savings. So you should absolutely take advantage of any match that's offered. If they're going to match up to $2,000, put in $2,000 so that they're going to fully match that, and it's money that you're leaving on the table if you don't take advantage of it. And the second point of all of this is it encourages you to save. Human nature is often, hey, I'd rather spend the money now and worry about the future later on. You're better off starting early in savings, and particularly if you're getting matching money, you're getting some encouragement to save today and getting additional money added to your savings by your employer. And also you've got that tax deferred benefit as well, that everything you earn while the money is in there until you turn 59 and a half, so potentially over, again, 30, 40 years, that money is growing and you're having no taxes taken out. So it's continuing to build up. Investing in the account itself, you usually can choose from a number of different investment options. These are going to include often stock mutual funds, bond mutual funds, ETFs or exchange traded funds, which often can be like indexes that offer a wide diversification as well. You can get into something very safe like a money market fund. I would say stay away from money market funds until you get very close to retirement, because while they're very safe, your return is, in today's marketplace, less than 1%. So it's not a good place to have your money for a significant amount of time, because you're basically not going to earn anything on it. So these are the types of things, options that you're going to have available to invest in a defined contribution plan. Now, your retirement planning decisions, which retirement plan should you pursue? If you've got an employer-sponsored plan, you are going to, as I say, for instance, a defined contribution plan, and there's matching, that's normally the best place for you. If they're matching, that's better than anything you can do just on your own, because you're getting a guaranteed return on your money, that for every dollar you put in, if they match $1, it's doubling your money instantly. You can't beat that in any other type of savings plan. So usually the employer's sponsored plan is your first choice in terms of retirement savings. How much should you contribute? again, I say as much as you can, as early as you can, is the basic rule of thumb, that whatever you feel is you can comfortably get by with in terms of going into your savings, take advantage of, especially as I mentioned, a matching situation. Mentioned before, Social Security likely is not going to provide sufficient funds. You better be taking care of your retirement needs and start early in doing that. Have a good savings set up. It's a good idea to increase contribution as your salary increases. So over time, and you might have started off where you said, I can comfortably put away $3,000 a year. Well, if your salary goes up by 25% over a few years, probably what your savings should go up as well, so that you're seeing increases in your contributions as your earnings increase. And final point to kind of keep in mind, you'll normally need about 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement salary to cover your living expenses in retirement. So just to give you an idea of what you're probably going to want to kind of keep the lifestyle you had pre-retirement, you don't want to retire and then feel like, my goodness, I can't do anything I really enjoyed anymore because I'm living on this fixed income and my savings is limited, whatever. You want to be in a position where you've got significant savings built up and that you can enjoy your retirement. So, Vanguard, company what we've talked about, has a lot of different mutual funds and retirement savings products. It's always a great site to take a look at, and their retirement section is very good, helping you through the decision-making process for retirement. So again, we've talked a little bit about the different types of choices you're going to have, and part of the thing is how do you make between bond and stock funds and exchange traded funds and index funds. Well, how am I going to invest my contributions? General comments would be use a diversified set of investments. Diversification is always a good idea of having a wide range of stocks if you're invested in the stock market. And don't be afraid to invest some in the stock market, some in the bond market, maybe some into real estate. We've talked even about precious metals or different things like that. So there's a variety of things you could look at. And diversification is always a good idea to help limit your risk a little bit. Consider the number of years to retirement. Certainly, if you've got, we've talked before, if you've got 30, 40 years to retirement, you can take quite a bit of risk. You can have the things that you're investing in fluctuate quite a bit, with the idea that if you have a bad year, you got plenty of time for things to bounce back. And the truth of the matter is, if you're invested in things like the stock market that tend to outperform other investments, they generally will perform better, but there will be more volatility in those returns. And while it may average 9%, like the stock market has averaged over the last 100 years, 9-10%, there have been years where it goes down 20%. So what happens there is it goes down 20%, and then maybe a year or two later it goes up 20%, and then is more in the range of where it normally is, of up 6%, 12%, 8%, in that range. But ultimately, if you've got a long time until retirement, you can take quite a bit of risk. Now, it says consider your level of risk tolerance, and hopefully one of the things you've learned out of this class is taking a little bit of risk is okay and is actually a good idea if you want a decent return. You're going to have to take a little bit of risk, and you're going to have to be able to live with a little bit of volatility in your returns, with the recognition that if you've got a long time horizon, you can live with a year where your savings go down by 15%. And one of the things that I'll often talk to people, especially people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, is don't look at your retirement savings account every day or every week or anything like that, because it's so far away when you actually have to worry about it. Don't let yourself get all caught up in, oh, it's down, I better do something. That's why the final point I have is don't be afraid to take the risk. Take it, invest heavily in the stock market. It's been the best performing area over the last 80 to 100 years. And you will benefit from earning, if it earns similar to what it has, again, over the last 100 years, you can expect somewhere in the range of 8 to 10% return. And that is far better than what you're going to get in safer bonds, treasury bills, money market funds, things like that, that are not going to fluctuate a lot, but aren't going to earn anywhere near 10% returns over the long haul. So this Exhibit 19.1 just shows kind of by age how your portfolio should be set up, or at least a rough idea. And this is, I might even be more aggressive than they are, but the idea that they're showing is you want to be taking some risk, particularly in your 20s and 30s, and have a majority of your money in high risk investments, not much in low risk investments, a reasonable amount in medium risk to kind of give you some stability, but that you don't be afraid to take quite a bit of risk, particularly in your 20s, 30s, even into your 40s, because you've got quite a bit of time before you're really going to need to start pulling the money out in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. And again, going back to investments, this should be pretty straightforward. It's Exhibit 19.1 of the high-risk investments are mainly in the stock market, growth stocks, capital appreciation funds, international stocks. Some of the more risky junk bonds could be considered high risk. And then medium risk is, they even have the S&P 500 index as medium risk, which is whether you put that in high or medium, it's a nice diversified, and those are going to be well-known, solid companies. So if they're putting that into medium risk, then I would agree that that's a place where you should have a chunk of your money on an ongoing basis. Some bond funds and the hybrid mutual funds where you've got a balance between some stocks and bonds. And then finally, the low risk are going to be government, like treasury bonds, very high rated corporate bonds, and money market instruments as things that are quite safe. The most popular of the retirement plans offered by employers is the 401k plan. This plan allows employees to contribute a maximum of $18,500 or up to $24,500 if they're 50 or older. And again, these limits can change and will generally slide up with inflation. And again, this plan is widely available and definitely the most popular of the defined contribution plans offered by employers nowadays. Now, when we talk about the 401k and the matching contributions, most employers, actually over 80% of all employers match all or a percentage of the employee contributions. So provides a nice incentive for their employees to contribute and be saving for their retirement. Again, the money isn't taxed until it's actually withdrawn from the account. And as with most of the retirement savings accounts, there's going to be a penalty, 10%, if you try and get at the money before you're 59 and a half. There is a Roth 401k plan. It's an alternative to the standard 401k. In this case, contributions are taxed when they're contributed, but not when they're withdrawn. So this is sometimes an option that's available depending on where you think you're going to be at in retirement and what your tax situation is currently, what you think it might be. The Roth 401k might be a good alternative to a traditional 401k plan. Now, some of you may end up in a 403b plan, which is very similar to a 401k plan, except the people that offer it, the companies that offer it, tend to be nonprofit organizations. But it's same idea as a 401k plan. It's actually, as an employee of the college here, we have a 403b plan rather than a 401k as a nonprofit organization. Now, the simplified employee plan, or the SEP, is really for small businesses, 1 to 10 employees, and often can be used by self-employed people. In this case, it's not really, unlike the others, the employee cannot contribute to the plan. It's just the employer that will contribute up to 25% of the employee's salary. And again, there's going to be penalties for early withdrawal. An option that some small firms would utilize. Another plan that's more for smaller to mid-sized firms, the simple or savings incentive match plan for employees. It's similar to a 401k. The employee can contribute up to $12,500 annually in 2008. And these limitations will change with inflation, but it's, as I say, similar to a 401k. There's profit sharing. This has been around a while, and it's where the employer makes contributions to the employee retirement accounts based on a specific profit formula. So as the company makes money, then they will basically pay out a certain percentage of that to the employees, up to 25% of the employee's salary, with a maximum of $55,000 per year. It's not all that common anymore, but I guess it's still around in some firms. And if the company is profitable, it's a nice way to take advantage of this, and it provides quite a bit of incentive for the employees to try and contribute positively to the company's bottom line if they know they're going to get a portion of the earnings of the company. There's also what's called an ESOP, or employee stock option, or employee stock ownership plan, where the employer contributes some of its own stock to the employee's retirement accounts. The downside of this is, rather than getting cash, you're getting just stock. It's more risky because your retirement is tied up just in the company's stock. And since it's focused only on the employer's stock, if the company runs into trouble, you're really you can really suffer big time, because, for instance, if they have to lay you off, you're going to lose your job, plus your retirement can take a huge hit because the company is struggling. So it's not the best in terms of, or I guess it's risky, is a good way to put it. I would be concerned if all my retirement was tied up in the company's stock that I'm working for, because you kind of have all your eggs in one basket. But if the company does very well, you can do quite well in this situation. Now, another issue that sometimes comes up, okay, we've got a defined contribution plan, let's say 401k. I worked for a company for 10 years and then decide I want to go someplace else. What happens then? Well, the good thing about most of these retirement plans is they're portable, meaning you can take them with you. You have decisions when you leave. So after leaving your employer, you may have the option of just retaining your retirement account at your old employer. If you've got more than $5,000, often that's an option. You can decide if they've got a great plan, it's got low fees, I like how it's done, it's the best. I'll just keep my money there even though I've left, and I still, as a former employee, I've got my money earmarked there, and I could keep it there. Now, you also have the choice to transfer it to your new employer and say, okay, I've got, as of this date, I've got $10,000 in my account there. I'd like that money transferred to my new account, to my new employer, and put it into their 401k, and I'll just then build from there and transfer it into the new account and the new employer's plan and have it there going forward. Or you have the option of taking the money out of your retirement plan and rolling it over into an IRA, which you manage yourself. So this is an individual retirement account. You can transfer the assets from your company retirement plan tax-free, avoiding any penalties. And this is fairly common, that you can pull the money out of like a 401k program at an employer and roll it into your IRA account. Say it's $10,000, put that into an IRA, and you may already have that opened up, or you may open up a new one that's going to just include the money that you've taken out of your old employer's plan, and then you can invest that how you want into, it may be with Vanguard funds and in a Vanguard IRA, and you can invest in any of the Vanguard retirement funds and make your own decisions and manage it yourself. And again, no penalties, and then it just has the rules of an IRA that, again, you can't touch it until you're 59 and a half, similar to what you'd have in a 401k, but it's all earmarked for retirement. Keogh plan is a retirement plan that enables self-employed individuals to contribute part of their pre-tax income to a retirement account. Again, this is if you're self-employed, and it gives a different type of option rather than working for another company. If you're working for yourself, you still have the ability to open up your own Keogh plan and put money in there up to $55,000. Again, those limits will change based on inflation, and again, the individual can determine how the funds get invested. The Simplified Employee Plan, or SEP, it can be used, we talked about earlier, for small firms. It can also be used for self-employed people, and it's another option available to basically have a plan that gives you tax deferred and tax sheltered income until you reach retirement age. On to individual retirement accounts, and these again are something that's stand alone. They don't have to be offered by a company. Your employer doesn't have to be involved. This is something you can do on your own. You can open up, well, we'll talk about a traditional or a Roth IRA. A traditional IRA enables individuals to invest right now up to $5,500 a year, or $11,000 for a married couple. If you're over 50, you can actually have additional contributions as you're getting closer, kind of catch-up contributions into your IRA. The contributions that you make may or may not be tax deductible depending on your income. In 2018, it was $63,000 for individual was the cutoff. So if your income was under $63,000 as an individual, you were able to deduct a good portion of the money you put in. It usually phases out and gets to zero at $63,000. You get no tax benefits. You can still put the money in, and it's going to earn interest tax-free and be sheltered, and you won't have to pay any tax on any earnings until you pull it out. But there's no upfront tax benefit. But if you, say, earn $40,000 a year, it's probably fully, you'll get to write off that $40,000 or the however much you put in. If you put in $5,000 a year, you're able to pull that $5,000 as a deduction off your income and reduce your taxes. I mentioned interest earned is tax deferred, and there's still going to be a tax and penalty on withdrawals before 59.5. So it's the kind of the deal you're making with the government, saying, I'm saving for my retirement. I'm not going to touch this money till I'm 59.5. The government says, we like that. We'll give you no taxes on your earnings until it's pulled out. So it's tax deferred and actually a tax benefit initially when you put your money in there, that you can deduct that from your taxable income. Now, a Roth IRA is very similar, but the difference is that, and it's largely the same in terms of putting in $5,500, $1,100, or $11,000 for married couples. You get the taxpayers over age 50 get the same additional $1,000 a year that they can put in. Difference is, when you put the money in, it's fully taxed at the time of contribution, but when you pull it out, you pay no taxes on it then. So it's kind of an interesting difference that you don't get any tax benefit when you put the money into the IRA, but you get a nice tax benefit when you pull it out. Again, there are some income limitations if you get into the higher income levels. as to what your tax benefits can be in the end, but well, actually, how much you can put in. But for most of us, that's not going to be a major concern. Now, when we compare the Roth and traditional, the advantage of the IRA or the traditional IRA over the Roth is that your contributions are tax deductible for the year of the contribution. So you're going to get a better, lower tax bill the year you contribute, if you contribute into a traditional IRA. But when you pull it out at retirement, you're going to get taxed then. The Roth IRA, the income is not taxed when withdrawn, and you're going to have to basically pay with after-tax dollars. That there's no tax benefit of the money put in there. But you don't have to pay taxes when you pull it out. Obviously, the marginal tax rates at the time of contribution and withdrawal are what are going to make you, or ultimately help you to make the decision of whether to go with a Roth or a traditional IRA. Traditional IRA gives you the benefit up front, and the Roth IRA gives you the benefit in the end of not having to pay any income tax. And that's for all the money you put in there and all the earnings you get as well. So for a lot of folks, the Roth IRA actually is the better idea because you have no consequences of paying any tax when you get to retirement. Now, another product that's out there that can be utilized in planning for retirement and providing retirement income is an annuity. An annuity is just this financial contract that's going to provide annual payments over a specified period. So, for instance, I'm right on the verge of retirement. I could look at purchasing an annuity that would guarantee me maybe $10,000 a year for the next 20 years, or even potentially for the rest of my life, however long that is. I would pay an amount today to purchase this annuity that guarantees me this stream of income for years to come. Now, generally, any contributions or payments into the annuity are taxable. Gains, tax deferred. These are not usually going to be the primary source of retirement, but at times they can make sense to kind of fill out holes or add to your overall retirement plan. Now there's fixed versus variable annuities. The fixed provides a specified return on your investment. You'll know exactly how much you'll receive at a future time. So it'll guarantee 4% return on the money you get put in and kind of allowing you to know right about what you're going to pull out. Variable annuities, your performance is going to be based on what you invest in and how those things perform into the future. So you might get into a variable annuity And it might kind of say, well, even in worse times, we'll guarantee a 3% return at a minimum. But if you are in the stock market with some of this, then on the upside, if the stock market does well, you could earn up to 15% or something like that. So you've got a little bit more uncertainty, but usually more of an upside potential with the variable annuity. The downside of annuities are pretty well recognized as usually the downside that's most talked about is high fees. That there's a good number of sales fees and management fees involved in purchasing the annuities. There's also sometimes a surrender charge may be imposed if money is withdrawn from the annuity. High commissions to sales and salespeople. Generally, they say look for no-load annuities that do not charge commissions and have low management fees. Okay, here's where we get into some, hopefully some encouraging stuff to look at in terms of estimating your future retirement savings. And again, some of this will encourage you to start early rather than late. First one's pretty straightforward, of just a relationship between amounts saved per year and savings at retirement. And we've got what different amounts saved per year over 40 years at 6% would be worth. So if you save $1,000 a year for 40 years at 6%, it's going to be worth, it looks like, a little under $200,000. And if you go up to $4,000 a year at 6% for 40 years, it's going to be over $600,000. It's always nice to see kind of that $1 million is a reasonable goal to say at least it'd be nice to have $1 million in savings on top of whatever Social Security and other stuff I have going into retirement. And that requires basically about $7,000 a year for 40 years at 6% to get over that, little over that $1 million mark. Now here we see the relationship between years you invest and what you end up with is savings at retirement. So this is looking at, assuming we put $5,000 a year in at 6%. And I think what's particularly interesting to look at is like 20, 30, 40 years. So 20 years, if we did $5,000 annual investment for 20 years, that would be saying if we want to retire at 65, that would be starting at age 45 and going for 20 years and putting $5,000 a year in, we'd have at 20 years worth under $200,000. If we start at age 35 and go for 30 years and retire at 65, we'd have right about $400,000. So we'd have about twice as much if we start 10 years earlier. So we'd have $200,000 more. If we start at age 25 and go 40 years, we'd have almost $800,000. So we'd have $400,000 more by starting at age 25 versus age 35. So it's very, bottom line is it's very important to start early. That having that money working for you gives you significantly more in retirement. And starting at age 35, again, and putting the same $5,000 a year in, you're getting $40,000 at age 35, $80,000 or $800,000, $400,000 at age 35 and going for 30 years. At age 25 and going for 40 years, it's almost $800,000. So you get twice as much. Or another way to look at it, you put for 10 years and you put $50,000 in, you've got $400,000 more by starting at 25 versus 35. So you only put in $50,000, and the time value created another $350,000 on top of that in compound interest and earnings. So all of that highlights the fact, and we've talked about it before with the time value of money, but there's a lot to be said for having your money working for you and starting early in your saving process. And finally, Exhibit 19.4, we've got an assumption of saving for 40 years, $5,000 a year, and then looking at 0 to 4, 6, 8, 10, 12% return on our investment. And this is kind of dramatically showing that if we can earn 10 or 12% versus 4 or 6%, we end up with geometrically larger amounts of money. And you might think 8% is a decent rate of return, and if you invest $5,000 a year for 40 years and earn 8%, you're going to have between $1.25 and $1.5 million. That's a nice amount of money. But if you can bump it up just from 8% to 10%, you're up to another $1 million, almost another $1 million on top of what you'd earn at 8%. And if you can go up to 12%, then you're up almost to $4 million. So this is where I mentioned earlier about taking some risk and earning a higher rate of return. If you can get just a couple of percentage points higher return, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars difference in what you end up with in retirement. So it really is important to make good decisions. Don't be afraid to take some risk and earn a nice return on your retirement savings, and you will be rewarded by the time you get to retirement. And I can vouch for it. I got to say, it's one of the good things about being a finance professor that compared to some of my other colleagues and folks that I know that maybe didn't take as much risk or make some of the decisions well in managing their money, have a lot less in retirement, than I do, because I've been teaching this and have a reasonable idea of where I should have put my money and that I should have started early and so forth. And so I can tell you, as somebody who's gotten to the point of retirement, that it's a good situation to manage your money well and keep a close eye on it. And even if you aren't doing it, get a good advisor. And if you aren't totally confident, get a good advisor. And as I say, don't be afraid to take some risk. Start early, and you can be in good position going into your retirement years. So to just recap some of what we've just talked about from Exhibit 19.3, shows that you want to start early. From Exhibit 19.4, earning 10% versus 6% over 40 years gives you roughly 3 times more in savings at retirement. So start early, don't be afraid to take some risk, and you will hopefully be well situated to live a comfortable retirement. And there's another place we looked at talked about Vanguard as one place earlier. Fidelity is another investment mutual fund company that has a good website giving significant advice for making your plans for retirement. So this kind of just leaves us with wrapping up key decisions about retirement planning. How should you invest? How much should you invest? How should you allocate your investments within your plan? And we go back to Stephanie Pratt, and she wants to just ensure adequate financial position at the time she retires and try and reduce tax liability, present income, and talks about various options. And she really is planning to contribute $3,600 to her employer's retirement plan, and the employer will also match that contribution with $1,400, giving her a total of $5,000 going into her retirement plan. And she recognizes IRAs as a possibility, but not going to use those right now. And it looks like she's saving $5,000 a year for retirement in her employer's plan. That's a pretty significant amount. Annuities, not really something she's interested in. And this kind of goes on to just say, again, her employer's retirement plan is where she wants to be right now. She's going to attempt to contribute the maximum allowed to her employer's plan and potentially a traditional or Roth IRA. She's going to attempt to maximize the amount of funds she can contribute to retirement accounts. And wants, in terms of how she's going to invest 70 or 80% of the money in a few diversified stock mutual funds, remainder in diversified corporate bond fund. That sounds good from what we've talked about, 70, 80% in the stock market. She's relatively young. Sounds like a good move. And that takes care of us. So we're done for the semester. Good luck on your final exams, and good luck on your financial futures. Hope you guys have a great holiday season, and take care.